Hail. It's about time.
Welcome back, Commanders, Cerebrus, and Executors, to the StarCraft Lorecast, the podcast where we dive into the lore, stories, and the interesting and fun facts about the StarCraft universe. I'm your host, Jeremy, otherwise known as General Fire, and I hope you're ready to dive back into the RTS franchise we all know and love. So, today's episode will still be continuing on with the major factions that changed the history and landscape. The Caprulu sector, and we'll be continuing with one of our last protoss factions as well. That's right, you all know them, you all love them. The red and black and spiky all over Tal'darim, known as or otherwise known as the Forged. So, interesting thing to note: there's technically two groups that utilize the name the Tal'darim. Now, most everybody knows of the Tal'darim from StarCraft 2, when they were first introduced there in Wings of Liberty and a couple of the missions where you had to gather the artifacts and whatnot. But if you have gone outside of the main games and actually touched a bit more of the expanded universe, you'll know that within the Dark Templar saga, we ran into another group of that called themselves the Tal'darim, which was a branch formed on Ire after it was abandoned. This one was led by the Dark Archon Ulrazaj with a benefactor named Zavator. So, who exactly are they? Well, the Tal'darim of Ire were a splinter crew of the Shelna Trihas, or the primary band of Kalai survivors on Ire, which they philosophically opposed and moved into the Zelnada caverns in order to separate themselves from the Shelna Trihas. They became addicted to the drug Sundra, which was dispensed to them by their benefactor, the Zavator. The Tal'darim of Ire were similar to the Dark Templar and the Protoss from the Eon of Strife in mentality and their outlook. Sundrop altered their brain chemistry to be more like the Dark Templar. Despite this, these Tal'darim hated and distrusted the Dark Templar, as they had no idea they were being converted into them. This alteration enabled them to learn new techniques, such as cloaking. Preserver Samara was able to access their memories upon the deaths of some members, which she cannot normally do with Dark Templar, since they severed themselves from the Kala. So, while they served the benefactor, only Felinis seemed to know more than a little about him, as the Zavator did not allow the other Tal'darim to directly interact with him. The Zavator would introduce them to Sundrop and taught them to trap Zerg and bring them to him. They seemed to suffer fewer losses from the Zerg. In return, the Zavator issued instructions such as destroy the Preservers or bring them to him, and to stay away from the giant Kaydarian crystal chamber on pain of death. So, but like I stated, in the end, this Zavator, I believe, was he a Terran? No, it was the Dark Archon Ulrazaj, who would give them this Sundrop drug. And, they would attack and try to rebel against the Dark Templar because of Ulrazaj. So, yeah. Eventually, this group would splinter and fight off against Ethan Stewart. But we haven't heard anything from them since. We don't know anything more about them. Because I believe initially this group, the Ire Tal'darim, were supposed to be having a bit more of an impact on the story in StarCraft 2, because these were the original parts. So I have some notes here that initially Chris Metzen stated that there was a connection between the ancient Tal'darim and the Ire Tal'darim, and implied that the former may also be under the influence of Ulrazaj. Valerie Watros would later confirm that the Ire and Slain branches of the Tal'darim were unconnected, and the Ire Tal'darim did not serve Amal. When Corlander left the group and traveled to Shakuris with Rosemary Dahl, he was detoxified of Sundra. However, he felt lost and ill at ease. At the Salnaga Temple of Shakuris, he would meet Tarim of the Guardians of the Salnaga Temple and was introduced to Sundrop again, suggesting a tie between the groups. Yeah. Then Sundrop, it was just a addictive protoss drug, had a deep dark green color and a sweet smell. They would use it by applying it to their skin. So, it alters the brain chemistry of those who use it, made it so that it would sever the link to the Kala and whatnot. So, not much on that group. If you want to learn more, I would certainly read the Dark Templar trilogy. But it's interesting we technically have two Tal'darim groups. Just one is no longer around. It ended up disbanded by the year 2503. So, but moving on to the group everybody here is here to learn about, the true Tal'darim. So, if we take a look here, okay? Before we became the Chosen, we were the Forged, and we can never be broken. The Tal'darim mothership pilot. The Tal'darim, otherwise referred to as the Forged or the Chosen, are a fanatical and warlike sect of protoss that were taken from Ire as Amon and his followers abandoned the planet. They stand apart from both the Kalai and the Nerazim. Like the latter, they do not use the Kala. So the Tal'darim first started as an ancient faction once based out of Slain, their home world. The Tal'darim are the most vicious and cutthroat of all the Protoss factions. They would spend countless ages in the service of Amon, who took them from Ire before the Aeonish strife. They claim to be the chosen of the Xel'Naga. The title of Tal'darim, which translates as the Forged, was taken from a group of mythological servants to the Xel'Naga. Tal'darim do inhabit many planets, mainly for the purpose of collecting and spreading Terrazine, and they would use the Terrazine to bring them closer to the Void, and by association, Amon. Some would remain on worlds such as Monolith after they have been mostly abandoned centuries ago. Within their culture, the Tal'darim are the most ruthless of all Protoss kindreds. They possess a culture that is distinct from their Kalai and Nerazim counterparts, as is their manner of thought. Their morals and ethics are considered barbaric by their brethren, but their power in battle is undeniable. Tal'darim warriors would wield Bane blades, ancient red psionic blades that draw power from the void. The Tal'darim have a brutal and warlike society, and all members adhere to a chain of ascension, which in essence determines who is in command of the society and is ruled by a high lord. No Tal'darim may fight or kill another above his rank unless he first challenges them to Rakshir, right by ritual combat. Attacking a superior outside a Rakshir duel is punished through public execution. So, I'd like to dive in a bit more about the chain of ascension. So, it is the societal order used by the Tal'darim who worship Amon. It is said that the chain runs from Amon himself and that every Tal'darim is a part of this sacred link. Only younglings are exempted from the chain. The chain applies to each and every Tal'darim and enforces a strict structure of rank. Any Tal'darim can give orders to those lower in the chain than themselves. The strong survive, weaker links in the chain are removed, and the Tal'darim as a whole becomes stronger. Gaps in the chain open up over time as Tal'darim perish. A formalized method of moving up the chain is through Rakshir duels, where the number of combatants ranges from 2 to thousands. In large duels, multiple gaps in the chain may open up, and a Tal'darim may find themselves rising up to even 100 links in a single bound. The higher one moves up the chain, the more the desire to ascend boils down to personal ambition rather than factional disputes that are present in the chain's lower areas. Now, not all Tal'darim seek ascension, but rather seek only to sharpen their combat skills and serve their High Lord. These Tal'darim often choose to become stalkers. The different ranks The High Lord of the Tal'darim is at the highest point of the chain. Below him or her comes Ascendants, whose rank increases as their title number is lowered. For example, the first Ascendant is of higher rank than the second Ascendant. Votary is a lower rank than that of the Ascendant. Supplicants are a type of Tal'darim warrior that provide their essence for Ascendants and the High Lord himself. Zealots are among the lowest ranks of the chain, but their desire to prove themselves make them dangerous adversaries. Some neat trivia: in Heroes of the Storm, Alarak, in his gag quotes, claims that the Chain of Ascension wasn't the first concept that Tal'darim employed. A carousel of omnipotence was one such concept he was partial to, but it never went anywhere. And Rockshore diving into a bit more of the Rockshore duels, or what it exactly is. Officially, it was a formalized duel system used by the Tal'darim, taking place at the Pits of Ascension on Slain. The duels were infrequent and often involved long planning ahead of time. It was rare to be surprised by a duel. They were generally watched by thousands of Tal'darim as a source of entertainment. Tagging a superior outside was punishable by public execution outside of these duels. The common edict of Rakshur was defeat your masters or fall beneath them. In truth, in Amon's mind, the essence of Rakshur was defeat your masters or rise beyond them. For Amon, death was the ultimate ideal, and the Tal'darim who took part in Rakshur were secretly mocked by their god. The rules of the Rakshur. The Rakshur duels had two primaries, the challenger and the higher-ranked challenge. Others could participate, with some duels involving thousands of Tal'darim on each side. The declarants bonded with the primaries, becoming supplicants, enhancing their psionic power. The winner was expected to push or throw their opponent into the pit. A long duel could take hours as the winner slowly pushed the loser toward the pit. All Rakshur duels would start at sunrise. Duels would usually take place between ascendants. If an ascendant refused a duel, their subordinates did not join duel either. And the laws of the Rakshur. By law, Tal'darim could not kill a Tal'darim's peer except in Rakshur. Doing so resulted in a long and public death. When someone declared, they were bound to their primary until victory or death. To reject a declaration of Rakshur or go against the laws was considered an act of cowardice. During the duel, only the declared combatants could engage each other directly, but the primary supplicants were allowed to engage one another. Supplicants could not engage with combatants, but could provide psionic support. And within the customs, the Tal'darim were expected to declare for one combatant at the start of the battle. Joining a duel without declaring was considered surprising, but not a break of customs. So that kind of dives into a bit more of the Rakshur and the Chain of Ascension, but main thing to know about this, the Chain of Ascension was a big part of the Tal'darim culture. So, like I stated, a lot of what people looked for, whether it was rising in the ranks or testing out their own combat skills, as the Tal'darim were, I stated previously, a far more warlike people of the protoss than their sister, cousin branches, however you want to call the Kalai and the Nerazim. But, so, bear that in mind for if you ever want to make your own Tal'darim protoss. So, but moving on, those deemed too weak to be of service to their High Lord are ruthlessly hunted down and executed by blood hunters. They do not take prisoners in battle. They were hostile towards outsiders. The Tal'darim had little interaction with other protoss and do not seem concerned with evangelizing their mission beyond their ranks. However, closer examination of their war machines revealed them to be the exact duplicates of Kalai designs, with little variation beyond construction materials. This has led to speculation among the Dalim that tales of lost Kalai expeditions and missing patrols over the eons may have been the result of encounters with the Tal'darim pilfering their technology instead. In this, there is some truth, as Tal'darim shipwrights excel in reverse engineering Kalai technology for their own ends. While they often scoff at the Dalim's choice of weaponry, many elements of the Tal'darim's arsenal originate from that of the Kalai and or Dalim, or in some cases, were simply stolen. The Tal'darim have likewise pilfered Nerazim designs, for they have long envied the Nerazim's temporal mastery. The Tal'darim do not utilize scientists or engineers within their ring, as every Tal'darim is a warrior, and believe that it is one's strength in battle that defines an individual. Tal'darim would utilize captured Kalai caste engineers and would interrogate them for engineering secrets. In the development and application of technology, the Tal'darim typically invest resources in offensive rather than defensive technologies. Their hostility has additionally extended to Terrans, such as the Terran Dominion and even Jim Raider, who had befriended other branches of the protoss. Tal'darim care little for the environment around them, and even their resource gathering devastates worlds. Captured protos have their environmental protection controls disabled, and assimilators dig so deep into the world for Vespene that they can often cause earthquakes. Some of their worlds, such as Slain, were once lush jungle planets before the Tal'darim devastated them through terrazine exposure. These Tal'darim believe in the concept of survival of the fittest and carry out sacrifices. In the day cycle of Slain, these Tal'darim are expected to fend for themselves, while at night, all are equal under God's gaze. Their society operates with the concept of the chain of ascension. Obey those above you, while being superior to those below you. One may ascend through the chain through rock shear duels, or simply move up as openings in the chain are created. Those high up in the chain are referred to as ascendants, while the top of the chain is the High Lord, of which there have been many. It is their philosophy that as the weak are removed from the chain, the Tal'darim will grow stronger. Only younglings are exempted from the chain. The architecture of the Tal'darim does bear some resemblance to that found within the Dalim society, but it utilizes harsher edges and stands tall and proud. Most of these designs were stolen from the Dalim and redesigned in order to give a more intimidating and somber appearance. And within their religion, they do have one, the Tal'darim worshipped Amon, a fallen Zelnaga, as their god, though they have given worship to the Zelnaga as a group of deities as well. Sarah Kerrigan claimed that their devotion made them even more dangerous. The Tal'darim followed Amon's creed, even carving his words into their bodies as demonstrations of their zeal. They believed that it was through Amon's will that the breath of creation was shared with them, and it was through his blessing that one could travel safely through the void. That once Amon had undone the corrupt cycle of the Zelnaga, they would be their own masters, and the day of ascension would come. The Tal'darim would seek to become hybrids and stand by Amon's side. This changed after Alarak took over as High Lord. The Tal'darim sought revenge on Amon for deceiving them. At least some Kalai regarded the Tal'darim as heretics, believing them devoted servants of the Zelnaga for years until discovering their true allegiance to Amon. So, it's a brief overview of them. Yeah, they used to worship Amon. Now they don't anymore because, spoiler alert, he's gone. He dead. But, so, moving on into their history, within the early history, the Tal'darim separated and went away with Amon eons ago, having been taken away with him and his Zelnaga not long after they abandoned Ire before the Eon of Strife. As such, they gained a different methodology and culture from their Protoss kin, and did not have the connection to the Kala that the Kalai brothers did. They were taken to the Sigma quadrant of the Caprus, and Amon left them with an order: defeat your masters or rise beyond them, which would end up going to be the chain of ascension and whatnot. So, the Tal'darim interpreted this as through obedience they would one day ascend alongside him. This was in fact a lie, a means for Amon to keep the Tal'darim in his draw. The Tal'darim typically stayed away from Dalim planets and did so for a long time. They nevertheless would pilfer Kalai and Nerazim designs technology, converting them into their own war machines. The Tal'darim would claim to have protected their sacred artifacts since before the Terrans achieved spaceflight. They had colonized and then abandoned planets such as Demon's Fair long ago. Demon's Fair bore two sources of terrazine. When one ran out, the Tal'darim left it. Some remain on worlds such as monoliths after they had been mostly abandoned centuries ago. And in the early days of the Tal'darim, the first High Lord was asked where would be their homeworld. He responded by pointing downward and stating, "Wherever I tread." This edict would remain unchanged within the Tal'darim. And so that's as much as we know about their early history and whatnot up until the Wings of Liberty campaign of StarCraft 2, which is when we would officially first meet the Tal'darim and run into them and start learning about them. So, during the Second Great War, the Tal'darim Guardians, based on a world ship led by Executor Nyan, came into conflict with Rhaenys raiders on numerous occasions, mainly over pieces of the Keystone. Now, if you all remember these Tal'darim, they didn't look like the ones we are used to. They were kind of black and blue coloring, if I remember correctly. No, I think so. Yeah, they were like a black and blue color, kind of somewhat similar to the the Kalai Protoss coloring back in Wings of Liberty. But at least their buildings were, they themselves were more blue than gold, like a blue and a gray or black and a blue, something kind of like that. So, the Battle of but moving on to the Battle of Belshir, Rhaenys raiders would travel to Belshir seeking Terrazine. Attempts to negotiate would prove fruitless, and the Tal'darim executor Nyan would order his troops to execute the raiders. The raiders would make off with 7 canisters of Terrazine. And that's for the quest line with involving Tosh. Battle for the artifacts. The Keystone would become a point of conflict during the Second Great War. It consisted of 5 pieces scattered across the Kapulu sector. 4 pieces were in Tal'darim custody, 1 in a shrine on Monolith, 1 in a Xel'Naga temple on the dead world of Zeal, another in a vault on the old world of Typhon 11, and the last on a world ship in the Sigma Quadrant. The Tal'darim viewed the components as holy relics and appointed themselves guardians against all these. Unfortunately for them, the device was desired by other races. Commander Jim Raynor and Crown Prince Valerian Mengs wanted to use the Keystone to attack the Zerg and eventually make Sarah Kerrigan human again. Meanwhile, the Zerg made numerous attempts to collect pieces of the Keystone as well. A band of Tal'darim guarding an alien artifact on Monolith would come under attack by both Rhaenys raiders and the Zerg swarm. Both forces sought the artifact, and despite the Tal'darim forces used as stone guardians, Rhaenys raiders were successful in stealing it. The Mobius Foundation would attempt to acquire an alien artifact from the Xel'Naga temple on Zeal. However, their forces were all wiped out by the Tal'darim. Some of the structures survived, however. The raiders were dispatched to the scene to make their own attempt on the artifact. Nyan once again demanded the Terrans leave to no avail. Rhaenys raiders fought their way into the temple and stole the artifact. This prompted Nyan to threaten Raynor. The Tal'darim then realized that the raiders would seek the remaining components and were dug in when the Terrans arrived on Typhon 11. The impending supernova did not deter the Protoss from their self-assigned duty. However, the raiders once more absconded with the component, leaving the Tal'darim to be consumed by the fire sweeping across the planet's surface. The raiders would then attack the Sigma Quadrant world ship, a derelict Xel'Naga world ship, and its Tal'darim occupiers for the final component. The Tal'darim would also keep Dark Templar prisoners on this ship, prisoners claiming to be the victims of treachery. As the Terrans closed on the component's vault, Executor Nyan would arrive in a mothership. The raiders would destroy the ship, causing the Executor to exclaim that he would simply return to Xel'Naga, and the Terrans would make off with that artifact. And then, of course, Raynor would use the Keystone to make Kerrigan human once again on charge. But the Queen's Blade's essence was converted into void energies, which was subsequently stored into the artifact. Narud would steal the artifact from Raynor and would travel to Atreus, a Tal'darim guard world, where he revived Aemon using the Keystone's void energy. The reborn Aemon would use a void catalyst to communicate with the Tal'darim High Lord Malash. Phantoms of the Void. Another group of Tal'darim would be discovered inhabiting the lower levels of Skygear Station. Working for Emil Narud, these Tal'darim would worship the fallen Xel'Naga Aemon. They also defended Aemon's temple at Skygear Station, working directly with Aemon's servant Emil Narud, willingly allowing him to experiment on them for his goals. Now, this is during the Heart of the Swarm expansion. if you guys didn't know. They would fail to defend the temple from Sarah Kerrigan and Alexei Stukov, who went on to defeat Narud's hybrids and kill Narud himself. And then we'd move on to Whispers of Oblivion, the kind of prequel to Legacy of the Void. So, Tal'darim, led by High Lord Malash, based on Atreus, raided Dalim colonies for Templar cast prisoners. The Tal'darim had stayed away from Dalim colonies for a long time. The prisoners were delivered to a Mobius Foundation base and experimented upon to create hybrids. Most of them did not survive. Hybrids would control the local Mobius forces afterwards. These prisoners were tracked by Praetor Talis to the Mobius base. She was planning on rescuing these protoss when two simultaneous events occurred. The Dark Ceratol would arrive, seeking clues to the last piece of the prophecy he had been seeking, and Kerrigan would arrive with a third force, intending to destroy anything to do with Amon. Talis' forces would rescue the Templar and discovered that they had been captured by the Tal'darim. Ceratol and Talis would lead their force to Atreus, the location of Amon's resurrection. Ceratol's forces would then engage the Tal'darim outside the Zelnaga temple. Later, he would infiltrate the Temple of Eris in order to recover the prophecy. While the Tal'darim stationed inside came to blows with his forces, inside, Malash would use a void catalyst located in the temple to communicate with Amon. The reborn Amon would order the Tal'darim to war with the protoss. The Dalim would make their way to the device in order to sever this connection and forestall the Tal'darim mobilization. When Ceratol finally encountered the Void Catalyst, the spirit of Tassadar would give him a hint of the future. Malash would escape, and the temple would begin to fall apart. Ceratol would also escape, despite Amon trying to stop him, but the rest of the Protoss forces would be killed. Ceratol intended to bring the prophecy and warning to Artanis. Now that's all during the prequel of the Legacy of the Void campaign of the Tal'darim. Then we would move on to the actual Legacy of the Void campaign, one of the last main bits of the main StarCraft 2 campaign. At the command of Amon, Malash would gather the Tal'darim and would begin to march for war. He sent First Ascendant Alarak and a contingent of the Death Fleet to the Protoss world of Glacius, where the Kali were experimenting with reviving the Purifier program, whom we spoke about in an earlier episode. The Dalim Protoss under Artanis would arrive to retrieve the technology, but Alarak would fire his mothership displacement beam in an attempt to destroy the facility. Artanis and his forces would slip through the displacement beam, and the Tal'darim attackers who attempted to stop them and would retrieve the Purifier technology. Alarak would then contact Artanis and would tell him he was not as weak as he thought, and that they would meet again soon. As the Dalim moved on Ulnar, Alarak and a contingent of Mobius Corps would give chase, trying to bar their entry into the structure. Artanis would fight through these forces and would activate the 5 celestial locks sealing the temple. The Tal'darim continued to hound Artanis and Kerrigan and their descent into the temple, warping in forces and using their mothership's displacement beams to try and stop the hierarchy. The temple, though, was a trap set by Amon, however, who would open a portal to the void, which would then cause a bunch of destruction within the material world. Alarak, though, who had earlier discovered Amon's true goal of consuming all life, including the Tal'darim, would use this opportunity to turn against him. He would board the spirit of Vadun and would confront Matriarch Phorazon, stating that Artanis was in danger and he desired to help him. After a brief confrontation, Phorazon would decide to trust Alarak, and the two would save Artanis by sealing the void portal. This would lead to Alarak's ascent. Alarak and his followers agreed to help Artanis in his fight against Amon, only if he would help Alarak defeat Malash and Rakshir, thus gaining the title of High Lord of the Tal'darim. Artanis would reluctantly agree and would set out for Slain. Alarak would inform Artanis that he had to defeat 4 of Malash's guardians to get to him. The Dalim fought through the Terrazine fog on the planet and slew the guardians. Alarak revealed that wasn't at all part of the Rakshir, much to the Artanis, but that it removed any allies of Malash that would challenge him after he became High Lord. Alarak would meet with Malash and challenge him, Artanis would loan his forces to support him psionically, battling Tal'darim and hybrids who in turn supported Malash. Eventually, Alarak would be victorious, slaying Malash and becoming new High Lord. He would then declare that the Tal'darim would fight Aemon and destroy him for his betrayal. But that would not be the last time that Araxia would occur, because within the co-op missions, which may or might not be part of the StarCraft storyline, after Alarak's ascension to High Lord, a splinter group of Tal'darim loyal to Aemon would challenge First Ascendant Janara to Rockshire. With the aid of Allied commanders, Janara was able to maintain position on the chain of ascension. But continuing on into the true story, or the canon one, against their god, the Tal'darim would fight alongside the Dalim in the last days of the End War, lending the Death Fleet to fight Aemon's forces. Alarak himself served as an advisor to Artanis aboard the Spear of Adun. When the time came to reclaim Ire from Aemon, Alarak and Vorazun would pair up to destroy one of the core Kadarian crystals powering the psionic matrix. When a sealed door barred their way, Alarak channeled enough power to destroy both the door and the crystal. Tal'darim vanguards would fight alongside Artanis in destroying the final Kadarian crystal. When Aemon revealed his host body, the Tal'darim helped the Dalim destroy the Void Shards, defending him while he transferred his essence to the new host. When the shards were shattered, the combined Protoss fleet unleashed an orbital bombardment on the host's body, annihilating it. Aemon, though, was still in control of the Kala-bound Protoss, however, and the Golden Armada arrived to destroy the Keystone, an artifact that could pull Aemon out of the Kala. The Tal'darim would aid in the final defense of the Keystone, giving it the time it needed to purge the Protoss of Aemon. And then you'd go into Aemon's fall. Though Aemon was defeated on Ire, he was not killed, merely thrown back into the void. 2 years after his banishment, at the behest of Kerrigan, Artanis would lead the Spear of Adun into the void itself to put an end to him once and for all. Tal'darim forces were among the Dalim who fought alongside Artanis against Aemon's minions. Eventually, Kerrigan would ascend into Zelnaga, and after a long battle would slay Aemon. The Tal'darim's revenge would be complete. After the defeat of Aemon, Artanis would offer Tal'darim a place among the unified Protoss. Alarak would decline, but would give any of his warriors who opposed his decision a single chance to join the Templar. Several Tal'darim did and would serve among the Dalim. He would then depart with his fleets to find a new homeworld for his people, embarking on a path of conquest. And that would be the full story of the StarCraft II main campaign and whatnot. But you'd still have stories of the Tal'darim going on later on down the line, such as Sacred Land. After Aemon's defeat, the Tal'darim had an uneasy ceasefire with the Terran Dominion. However, Fourth Descendant Malaine took a force to reclaim the Terrazim on Belshir, forcefully mining the planet. In response, Terrazim-crazed stranded scientist Egon Stetman began construction of his Megaswarm to oppose them. The Terran Dominion sent a force to retrieve Stetman, but the Tal'darim shot down their medevac and engaged their Vikings. Malaine's assistant worried this would violate Alarak's decree, but Malaine assured them that they would be done soon and would purify Belshir after they were done to cover their tracks. However, Malaine would be killed by a ghost leading the Megaswarm, and the tide of mechanical Zerg would destroy the Tal'darim's operations. So, someone said pick a fight with Egon Stetman, and he lost. But then you have Waking the Beast. So, which is one of the times Alarak would actually ally with somebody after Artanis, which there's an interesting conversation. This is between Novaterra and Alarak. Well, what do you want? The same as you. To annihilate the defenders of man. They destroyed a remote Tal'darim outpost and then scurried away before the Death Fleet could retaliate. Such brazen disrespect demands retribution. I will exterminate them like the pests they are. So, yeah. Alarak's a cool character. Certainly has some great voice lines. So, years after the End War, a remote Tal'darim outpost was attacked by the Terran separatist group, the Defenders of Man. The group would retreat before the Death Fleet could arrive and attack them. High Lord Alarak would dispatch First Descendant Janara with the Death Fleet to hunt down and destroy the Defenders of Man for their transgressions. The Death Fleet would arrive on the world of Tyrador 9 and would use their void rays to assault the Feral Zerg, lured there by the Defenders of Man from orbit. Janara would then deploy Tal'darim mothership, defended by 4 shield projectors, to the surface and intended to use it to destroy the Defenders of Man on the planet. The Tal'darim would also deploy a special powerful fleet beacon to Shell Isle near the battlefield. However, as the Defenders of Man were defending a large number of Terran Dominion civilians, the ancient Nova Terra and her covert ops crew would move in to ensure that they were evacuated. Nova would destroy the shield projectors, weakening the mothership. Enraged, Janara would send the mothership after the covert ops crew. Without its shield projectors, it was vulnerable to Terran weaponry and would then be destroyed. The Tal'darim were forced to pull back from the planet. After the conflict, High Lord Alarak would board Nova's command ship, the Griffin. Nova would raise a rifle to fight him, but was stopped by Rigel, who said he came as a guest. Alarak explained the transgressions the Defenders of Man committed against the Tal'darim and said that he came for vengeance. When he realized that Nova was once one of the Defenders of Man, but had been subjected to a memory wipe, he made a bargain with her. He would show her where she could find the terror scene, which would undo the mind wipe if she led him to the Defenders of Man. Nova would agree, and Alarak would guide her to the planet of Jarban Minor. As Nova and her squad arrived on the world, Alarak would allow Janara and a cadre of his warriors to deploy to the surface to challenge Nova. Rigel suspected that Alarak was attempting to cool his weakest warriors against her. The Tal'darim would attempt to destroy the emotion extraction devices being used to extract terracine from the native Jarvan gliders, but Nova's crew warded away both them and the infested Yamojan researchers on the planet and would mine enough terrazine. With his part of the bargain fulfilled, Alarak appeared to Nova, stating that provided the terrazine didn't destroy her, she would be able to restore her memories. Nova would ask how she would contact Alarak when she knew where the Defenders of Man were, and he simply stated that he would know when the time comes. With that, the two factions went their separate ways. Later in the conflict, Nova would discover that General Carolina Davis was the leader of the Defenders of Man, and Vardona was their base of operations. As Emperor Valerian Manx revealed this publicly, the Tal'darim struck the world with great ferocity. In a fell swoop, they began assaulting the city the Defenders of Man operated out of, killing soldiers and civilians alike from the Dominion and the Defenders. Alarak psionically contacted Nova, saying their bargain was fulfilled and that the Defenders would die as they agreed. Nova, though, would refuse to accept Alarak's slaughter of civilians, and the Dominion would prepare their defenses. The Tal'darim would clash against a line of forces from the Dominion, Defenders of Man, and Nova's covert ops crew. During the course of their battle, Admiral Matt Horner would deploy Gorgon-class battle cruisers from the Dominion fleet, strafing the Tal'darim attack paths. First Ascendant Janara personally led Tal'darim motherships to break the Dominion line, but to no avail. After suffering immense casualties, the Tal'darim were forced to retreat from Vardona. After the battle, Alarak would contact Nova, saying her betrayal was noted and that she had made a powerful enemy. She said he had as well, and that he should never again return before cutting communications. But then you would have the Menace of the Stars. Sometime after the end war, the Tal'darim were held by a renegade Narazim and led to the Emojan protected world of Anos. Death would sweep over the base in a fierce battle, annihilating the defenders and purifying the base. However, over the course of the battle, a Terran ship carrying powerful protoss energy core rammed into a Tal'darim mothership, destroying them both in a cataclysmic explosion. And that's the history of the Tal'darim we know as of far. Like I keep stating, I want to learn more stories. I love the lore of StarCraft. Hopefully we learn more about the Tal'darim and who they are. Who knows, maybe we learn about more of their early history or not. But moving on into their known members, you have High Lord Alarak, High Lord Malash, who is dead, First Ascendant Janara, First Ascendant Norakat, who's dead, Second Ascendant Gurash, who's dead, Third Ascendant Zanish, who's dead, Fourth Ascendant Milani, dead, Emil Nerud was affiliated with them for a time, who's dead, Executor Niall, who's dead, and Amon's champion, who's dead. I'm sorry. I just find that funny. But Tychus Finley had a nice quote for us. Your Tal'darim, what happened? blue and gold not edgy enough for you. And so their known worlds, though, were Atreus, formerly Belashir, formerly Demon's Fair, formerly Kettle 4, formerly Monlith, formerly Slain, formerly Typhon 11, and Zeal. Their units, or unique ones, were Ascendants, Bloodhunters, Destroyers, Havocs, Slayers, Supplicants, the Tal'darim Mothership, a Tal'darim Drill, Vanguards, War Prisms, and Wraithwalkers. There are also a couple of cool units from Diablo that aren't canon. You had an Ascendant Archon and a Tal'darim Templar, which I believe were skins for the Diablo series. And some interesting notes on them. In Wings of Liberty, the Tal'darim use the same color scheme in unit models as normal protoss. In Heart of the Swarm, they use the same visuals as the protoss corrupted by Mar. In Legacy of the Void, Tal'darim units have a black and red color scheme and unique models. This stems from development constraints, as in Heart of the Swarm, the Tal'darim were simply darker protoss, with slightly different color scheme. The new scheme in Legacy of the Void came from more time being allowed to flesh out the Tal'darim, and Samwise Dieter, who did the concept for Alarat. The new Tal'darim aesthetics stemmed from Alarat's. A full Tal'darim skin set, named The Forge, sorry about this, was initially made available as a reward for Protoss BlizzCon 2017 War Chest. Those skins were then introduced in the Tal'darim building skins were then introduced in the Katowice 2019 War Chest, which now you can purchase those skin sets separately. We already spoke upon the group of Tal'darim that appeared in Dark Templar Saga prior to the Tal'darim's first on-screen appearance in Wings of Liberty. And to some degree, it was also the same group that appeared in Shadow Hunters. I believe that's, that book. So, like I said, Valerie Woutros said that the Iron Slain branches of Tal'darim were unconnected. The Tal'darim symbol from Wings of Liberty is available in multiplayer as a reward for winning 1,000 team games as Protoss. A decal named Tal'darim Warcrest is available as a reward for players who purchase the digital deluxe or collector's edition of StarCraft II Hearts of the Swarm. The Tal'darim symbol from Legacy of the Void is available as a spray, banner, and war banner in Hearts of the Swarm. Tal'darim skin tints are available for Probius, for both default and prime, Alexstrasza, the Zerg Hunter Zeratul, Templar Li Ming, and the Reaver Mount. In the 2013 to 2018 period, the Tal'darim were the most popular Protoss faction on the wiki in terms of the number of page views. In Season 9 of Hearthstone Battlegrounds, a Tal'darim themed skin for Jaraxxus was introduced, modeled after Alarak. And the Tal'darim will appear as a sub-faction within the StarCraft tabletop miniature games, and they will be coming with unique models as well. So, stay tuned for that. That's going to be fun. But that is all we have today over the Tal'darim faction of the Protoss. I hope you all enjoyed learning about them, kind of diving into who they are, a bit more of their culture and their beliefs as well. An interesting faction, I think. Well, let me step back. Even though they were introduced in Wings of Liberty, I don't think they were really as interesting of a faction until we got to Legacy of the Void, when, like I stated from the notes we have, that they were more fleshed out than they previously were. So, hope you all enjoyed this. Hope you all still enjoy the episodes and whatnot. I do have a Discord if you all are interested. Please stop by it. So we can discuss a lot of different things about StarCraft in there. There will be polls I'll try to post about what episodes you would like, and including I also would love to hear episode suggestions as well. So, but that is all I have for you all today. Hope you all have a good rest of your day and week. And remember, in Taro, I do.